They just wanted to go for a canoe ride on the lake. It was going well until Fatten dropped her phone in the water. She panicked and attempted to reach over the edge of the canoe to grab the phone before it sank. Dot yelled at Fatten to leave it since there was no way to get it back. Fatten didn't listen. Leah went to pull Fatten back since she was shaking the canoe, but as Leah jolted forward to grab her, the canoe fully tipped over. All three of them fell into the water. Dot attempted to swim over to the canoe to get it back, but the current of the water was so rough that she slammed against it and hit her head. The pain and dizziness came quick, but she thought nothing of it. Leah yelled and directed the two towards a nearby island. Fatten got to shore first, Leah following shore after. Due to Dot's collision with the canoe, it took her a bit longer to swim to shore, but she managed. The blood dripping from her head stressed her out even more, making her go slower. She got to shore and stood up, only to collapse a couple seconds after. "Dot!" Fatten yelled and ran over to her, kneeling by her side. Leah followed her. "Oh my God, you're bleeding." Dot wiped the blood off of her forehead, but it quickly came back. "Really? I had no clue. Thank you for that absolutely ridiculous observation, Leah." She narrowed her eyes at her and raised her hand to show Leah the blood she had just wiped off. Leah thought it was good to see that her sense of humor was still there. "Are you okay?" Fatten grabbed Dot's arm. "I'm fine. It was just a bang on the head," Dot replied, standing up and looking around at their surroundings. They were completely screwed. Water was all they could see for miles. That and the island that they were now stranded on. "Just give it a bit. The bleeding will stop," Dot assured them. "I used to say that all the time," Leah joked, and Fatten smacked her shoulder. Dot gives Leah a confused look. "Okay, let's figure out what the hell we're going to do about this. Dot, you're the survival expert, and we've gotten through being stranded on an island before, so why don't you tell us what to do?" Fatten said. "Well, we're going to need a lay of the land, so we can start with that," Dot stated, beginning to walk along the perimeter of the island. Fatten and Leah exchanged a nervous glance before following Dot. After they trekked around the perimeter, they went into the forest. "Oh my God, there's a blackberry bush." Fatten ran over to the bush and picked a blackberry, throwing it at Leah. "Are they good?" Leah asked, walking over and eating the one that Fatten threw at her. "Okay, they are. Dot, come eat some of these." She laughed with Fatten as they ate more. Dot didn't reply. "Dot." Fatten smiled and turned to look at her. The smile quickly faded when she saw Dot fall to the ground. "Holy crap!" Fatten yelled and stood in shock for a moment. "Well, don't just stand there." Leah pushed past her and knelt down next to Dot. Fatten broke out of her state of shock and rushed to Leah's side. She grabbed Dot's shoulder and shook her roughly. "Dot? Dot, wake up." Leah grabbed Fatten's arm and pulled her hand away. "Leah, calm the hell down. She's fine." Leah ripped her hand away and checked Dot's pulse. "Fatten, she literally has no pulse." She dropped Dot's wrist and looked at Fatten. "You probably did it wrong," Fatten stated and placed her fingers on Dot's neck. No pulse. Leah was right. Fatten went silent for a moment, her touch lingering on Dot's neck. "What do we do about this? We learned our lesson after last time. We can't just bury her until help comes. She's already dead. There's no saving her," Leah said quietly. They both knew that recovering the body didn't really matter, since their friends didn't live nearby and Dot had no other friends. That, and she had no family either, so a funeral was basically off the table. "Fine," Fatten whispered. Leah looked at her and tilted her head. "If we had a lighter, we could start a fire and burn her body." Fatten looked back at Leah. "Hold on." Leah reached in her shirt, pulled out a lighter, and tossed it to Fatten. Fatten caught the lighter and swapped her gaze between the lighter and Leah. "How long have you... Did you just pull this out of your damn bra? Why do you even have this? I'm so confused." Leah laughed. "Up to audience interpretation." "Alright, stop being an idiot and help me commit arson on our best friend." Chapter 2. Fatten and Leah successfully burned the body. They weren't sure what to do with the ashes after, so they just left them where they were. It was quickly approaching night, and now that the person that actually knew about wilderness survival was dead, the girls didn't know what to do. "I feel like shelter is our top concern. We should probably get on that," Fatten suggested. It was her only idea. She tried thinking about what Dot would do, but just the thought of her was painful. Dot was Fatten's first best friend. When they all got stranded on the island, Dot comforted her first, despite the fact that they hardly knew each other. They were connected from the moment they met and formed a close bond, so it's completely reasonable for Fatten to be deeply affected by Dot's death. "Yeah, let's figure that out." Leah looked around and saw a few long branches that she figured must have fallen off the tree. She grabbed them and began to work on the shelter. It took them quite a while to finish, but eventually they were left with an A-frame. They placed more sticks on both sides of it to form walls. Fatten made a fire in front of one of the ends of the shelter and stared into it. Once Leah finished with the shelter, she sat next to Fatten. "Are you okay? You seem on edge." "Yeah, no, I'm fine," Fatten stated, looking at Leah for a second before looking back at the fire. Leah wasn't sure if Fatten was telling the truth, since she seemed off since they got on the island. That, and she'd been staring into the fire blankly for what seemed like ages, which isn't something anyone would usually do if they were okay. "All right, if you say so. Come on, let's go find food." Leah grabbed Fatten's hand in an attempt to pull her up. Fatten pulled her hand away. She was tired. Not only was she tired, but she was also hungry and grieving, but the fatigue was definitely the most prominent. "I'm just gonna sleep," she said, moving further down to the shelter and lying down. Leah laid down next to her. "Are you sure? It's still pretty light out." Fatten rolled over and traced patterns in the dirt below her. "Yeah, I'm exhausted. Let's just get food in the morning." Leah wasn't interested in putting up a fight, so she decided to sleep as well. It seemed to be around midnight when Leah woke up. It was freezing and pouring rain. She sat up and noticed two things. The fire was out and Fatten was nowhere to be seen. At the moment, the fire was the least of her concern. She needed to find Fatten first. The first thing she did was check deeper in the forest. Fatten wasn't there. Then she checked over by the water and Fatten wasn't there either. Leah just decided to go back to the shelter in hopes that Fatten had returned. She was about halfway back to the camp when she heard a faint sob come from a short distance. Leah followed the sound and eventually found Fatten sitting over by the blackberry bush they had found earlier, directly next to the spot where Dot died. "Fatten?" Leah approached her cautiously. "It's my fault. She's dead because of me," Fatten said quietly. Leah knelt down next to her and put a hand on her shoulder. "It's not your fault, though." That was a lie, and they both knew it. Fatten was the one that tipped over the canoe and stranded them on the island. None of this would have happened if she just left the phone. Therefore, Dot's death was her fault.